Welcome to another episode of the Gender Watch podcast, where we explore critical issues through a gender lens. In today's episode, we'll delve into the very heart of democracy, what it means to be inclusive and participatory from a gender perspective. Remember, the Gender Watch podcast is brought to you by the Aya Institute for Women, Politics and Media. I'm Regina Bolibote, your host, and as always, we'll bring you our segment, Gen Stats, that looks at the data and the statistics driving the narrative. And then we'll bring you Vox Populi, where we sample views of people from the street about the topic we're discussing for the day. Let me now introduce our guest for today's conversation. She is a gender and inclusion specialist with over a decade experience in advancing gender and social inclusion across various sectors. She's currently the Gender, Diversity and Inclusion Specialist at the West Africa Democracy Solidarity Network. Please help me welcome to our podcast, Miss Divine Intiamwa Berko. Welcome, madam.
Thank you, Regina, and thanks to Aya Institute for hosting such a wonderful program, and thanks to your partners as well.
Okay, so first things first, democracy is often seen as a system of governance that guarantees equal participation, but that's not the case for women, is it?
No, so democracy, as we all understand from the popular definition by Abraham Lincoln, democracy is government of the people, by the people, for the people. And that itself denotes that participation of all genders, men, women, young people, persons living with disability, and everybody. But unfortunately, what we see, per the statistics available, you tend to realize that there is low participation of certain category of people in the society. Women are one of the groups that are we usually find them not participating or be included in the process of democracy, persons living with disability and even young people.
I like the fact that you started on the note of data and statistics. So let's zoom into our GenStat segment, where I'd like you to present the data and what the figures say about democracy, inclusion, and participation.
Right. So I asked the question, democracy is about inclusion, but is everybody included in democracy? Afrobarometer, as we all know, it's an institution that collects data from Africa, opinion views from the people, and then one of the data from the round 9 from 39 countries talks about the participation gap. And from the participation gap, they looked at issues related to men and women who have voted in the last election, men and women who have discussed politics occasionally or attended a community meeting. All these indicators are issues that talk about that relates to the process of democracy. And from the statistics, you notice that we have about 66% of women who said they had participated in the last election, as against 72% of men who also said they had participated in the last election. When you take the indicator of people who have discussed politics, you notice that even the percentage for women is lower, 53% as against 69%, and the list go on and on and on and on. And so you notice that there is even participation gap. There is an issue with the participation in terms of women voting or taking part in elections by exercising their franchise, in terms of even having conversations around politics, in terms of even participating in community town hall meetings to discuss issues related to their own development. We notice that there is always a gap as compared to their male counterparts.
Okay, so that's the data. But aside that, what other statistics or figures can we point to based on the research and the data available?
So that's the data that's available indicates that there is participation gap. Afrobarometer also collected data on perception of gender equality in political leadership. And Afrobarometer asked a question: should women have equal chance to be elected? Now, the response from the various countries, the average says that the average of the population, 75% of them said yes, women should have an equal chance to be elected. That same survey also tried to look at whether men make better leaders. The statistics also says that 23% of the respondents said men make better leaders. From inference, you could say that so the majority also believes that women can make better leaders, and so women should be given equal opportunity to be elected.
Our podcast is heavily reliant on data, and so I'm very glad that you're here with us because for our Gen Start segment for today's episode, we want to look at the data and the statistics as far as democracy, inclusion, and participation is concerned. So they say that democracy is a system of government that guarantees equal participation and representation. But that doesn't seem to be the case for most marginalized groups, including women, is it?
The data indicates that although democracy is a system of government that should involve everybody, men, women, children, young people, person living with disability, to be able to contribute to discussion or decision making concerning issues that matters to them and their development. But unfortunately, that is not what we see. Afrobarometer conducted a survey in 39 countries for the round 9 survey, and they captured issues on the participation gap. So they had a number of indicators they were looking at in terms of people, men and women who have voted in the last election, men and women who have discussed politics occasionally or have attended community meetings, and so on and so forth. And the data indicates that under voted in the last election, you notice that we have 66% of women who said they had voted in the last election, as against 72% of men who said they had voted in the last election. So you see the difference, that there is no parity in that. When you also take the issue of people who have discussed politics occasionally, you notice that the data also says that 53% of women said they have discussed politics occasionally, and then 69% of them also, of the males, said they had discussed politics occasionally. So this clearly also points out to the fact that in all areas, in terms of participation in the democratic process, we don't have parity. We don't have the balance of their participation, that men and women participating equally. Now, in the same Afrobarometer data, they sought to seek the views of people also within the 39 countries to also see their perception of gender equality in political leadership. And the question was asked: should women have an equal chance to be elected? And the other statement was that men are better leaders. So from the data that is available, the average of the countries that were sampled, the statistics says that 75% of the respondents said that women should have an equal chance to be elected, whilst 23% of them said men make better leaders. So when you infer from this data, you realize that even the majority of the people attest to the fact that women can also be better leaders. And so they should be given equal opportunity to be elected. All the various demographic indicates that there is high interest or there is high support for women to be elected or women to be given equal chance to be elected into political positions. Now, let me narrow down to Ghana. So for Ghana, the statistics is not so different from what we have said for the African countries. And so for Ghana, the statement, men make better political leaders than women and should be elected rather than women. The finding says only 21% said they strongly agree or agree, while 78% of them said women should have the same chance of being elected to political positions. So there is that mass acceptance that women can also be better leaders and so should be given the opportunity. But what do we see? This is the perception. What do we see in reality? In reality, is it the same? Even when you take the Parliament of Ghana, we have just 14.5% being women. When you look at female elected assembly members, I'm speaking on a data from 2022 on the situation of women participation in governance in Ghana. When you look at female elected assembly members, we have less than 5 of them. Then when you look at female appointed members, we have 26% of them. When we look at the MMD chief executives, we have 15% of them being women. And then when you look at even the local government service staff, it is only 36.7% of them that are women. So you notice that when you make a comparison of the perception and the reality, there is vast difference. If people have the perception that women can also be better leaders, women should be given equal opportunity, then why are we not giving the opportunity? Why are we still recording low numbers for women in political decision? Afrobarometer also talked about women most important rights. One of them I would want to highlight and link to the low participation of women in political leadership or political life is gender-based violence. So gender-based violence has been identified as one of the key issues, women rights issues that affects women. And so if we want women to participate adequately, come out in their numbers, be free, be able to stand for elections, one of the things we have to look at is gender-based violence. There is a data from the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project. This data was collected for West Africa within 2010 to 2020. The report was published in June 2022. Interestingly, they recorded that political violence targeting women in West Africa by types, the types of political violence, we see attack. The percentage is 42%. 42% of the women that contest for political leadership suffer attack. 31% of them are adopted or forced to disappear, whilst 16% of them suffer sexual violence. This data is alarming. Although it has been taken between a period of 10 years, it's alarming. And we see it. Women who come out to contest for political position, they are verbally abused, they face all forms of violence. you see. And so these are some of the deterrents why women don't show up. Other issues aside the violence, you can talk about economic factors, where politics in the world, especially in Ghana, in West Africa, is highly expensive. It's talk about campaign, talk about filing fees, talk about all these. Politics from the local government system, level to the national level is expensive. And so ask yourself, how many women are able to get these resources to participate? Let's not forget the fact that also resources are not in the care of women. Women do not take absolute decision on the use of resources in the home setting. And so it will be difficult for a woman who wants to even participate in politics to be able to take a family resource that I am going to use it for campaign or for filing fees. You need to discuss it, and you need the approval of your family head. You need the approval of your husband. You need the approval of some man in your family, in your life, before you can actually make use of that. The other issue has to do with patriarchy. And so patriarchy, we all know, male dominance. The society, it's a male-dominated society where we usually see men as leaders and women as followers. And so when the woman wants to be a leader or to lead, then people start having issues, people start having concerns about. So yes, so there are issues related to why women are unable to participate. You can talk about the educational levels in terms of their educational level, comparing that to men. When you look at it, you see that even you see from the basic level, there is some kind of parity, but as they grow to secondary, tertiary, the numbers reduce for the women. And so at the end of it all, you find out that just the majority of the women are not able to acquire that necessary skill and education to enable them to fully and adequately contest with their male counterparts. Yeah.
Wow, that's very insightful. The data that you shared with us about how non inclusive, if I can say that, our democracy is, not just in Ghana, even, because this is Afrobarometer, this stretches beyond the borders of the country. Are we as a country disadvantaged because we're not reaping the benefits of an inclusive governance system like democracy?
Yes. So we are. When you get the views of all genders in formulating policies, you notice that your policies become stronger. Your policies serves the needs of the people. When you are coming up with a developmental project, let's say you want to build a borehole. Who are those who use the borehole more? Who use water more in our homes? Is the women. You don't consult the women. You go just find a place, set it up, and you expect them to make use of it. You may not achieve that desired result. So you notice that you end up wasting resources on issues that necessarily are not the needs of the people. And so if the government involves the parties concerned, you are able to come up with better policies, better interventions to serve the needs of the people. There is this principle that not for them, without them. You should not come up with a policy, an intervention, an initiative for a group of people without seeking their input. Because at the end of it all, they are going to be the users. They are going to be the beneficiary. So it is important that you seek the views of the people to ensure that your policies, your interventions actually address the needs of the people.
Okay, that phrase, not for
them, without them,
seems to capture succinctly what inclusion is all about.
Exactly.
Okay. You're listening to the Gender Watch podcast, brought to you by the Aya Institute for Women, Politics and Media. We're having a very interesting conversation about the meaning of democracy, looking specifically about inclusion and participation from a gender perspective. And you've just heard and watched Divine talk about the statistics and the data as captured in the research that has been done. Grim statistics, if you ask me. And at this point, she's done that for our Gen Stats segment of the podcast. At this point, I want us to have a listen to what people are saying about the meaning of democracy, inclusion, participation, and all that comes with this system of governance that we've so embraced as a country, which ideally should guarantee equal representation and participation, but in practice or reality, is not happening. Let's have a listen.
I think it can work by we including each and every woman who is capable, and I believe we are capable to do the work. So we should include every woman who is ready and also capable to practice democracy. Yes.
The reason I think for accounting for that is because in those days, right, women were not seen as people who possess enough, like when it comes to maybe what men can do. Not like we have it today, that perception that what men can do, women can do better. Those days it wasn't like that. You get it? Because women were sent into marriages, and then at the end of the day, what they were thinking about was to take care of kids and do other things for their household or whatever. But in this day, it's not like that. And by then, going back to the question you asked, why, when it happened like that, or let's say when a perception existed for a very long time, it becomes difficult to break it in terms of mentality. You get it? So it takes really strong women who are very highly intellectual to break that bondage. So I think based on African culture, we still have that mentality. You get it? We still some parts of even Ghana still hold that mentality that women don't really possess that qualities when it comes to what leadership.
And also sometimes no Ghana motions to say we a man say Ghana ade ba kwa me ho omo ma se ni wa assembly wo ho na emma ye junko echiri pa ba ma de ono wa busy ejuma we obetu efie na but yeah yeti echiri no de ni de koso nti ma those were leadership ebebo emma no pa to sana me mehwe ebebo pa ife ni say location wo kura so mo je nkonja ba mo di be ma mbe mansa na ma no gina ho no enu de yo common pa. And ma bibi I was saying, but even in our religion, your buma pa moko baby kura who be protecting. But blacks there and I can say Africans, so don't say bibi or member first, even though member first, but I was saying man also almost supporting ma.
Because greater portion of men think that they belong to the kitchen, which is not true. So then I encourage women to come out, and if they have the talent or the necessary education, like they have the required education that they all have, they can seek for those positions which they can equally get, which both men and women vote for them, which is also good. Yeah.
I think compared to the years before, I think it's better, and now I think it's better. Why am I saying this? Because we have a lady who is aspiring to be, let's say, vice president in this country, which we've not had that in the history of this country. So I think it's working. The ladies are getting the chance and the opportunities to also come out with what they have inside of them. Yeah, so I think in the future we'll see more ladies. Yeah. What do I think governments can do? Okay, so now I think the government can. I think the government is already doing what they have to be doing, like giving more women chances to enroll in schools, giving them good cut-off grades so that they can enter schools, and then also supporting them with in some schools they subsidize their school fees and also their sanitary pads thing and all that, other conferences to empower women, and almost everything around us now is talking about empowering women. So I think the government is already on course with this project, and with time a lot of things will change.
So, those are views from the streets about the meaning of democracy and this very important conversation we're having here. Let me come to you, Madam Berko. You've watched and listened to the verdict from the streets. It succinctly explains where we are as a country, right?
Yeah. So from the views from the street, you see that one of the people talked about the data I presented on the perception. So people believe that yes, women should be given equal opportunity. The other one I want to talk about is where one of the people said women should come out. Women should come out. We are always saying women should come out. You can't come out when the barriers are not broken. What are the barriers? The political barriers. Are there laws that foster participation? You need to look at it. And when you look at Africa, you can talk about Rwanda, where they passed their affirmative action or parity law. And Rwanda, remarkably, has 61.3% women representation in parliament. Other countries in Africa have passed parity laws. You can talk about Senegal, you can talk about Kenya, and even recently Ghana, we've passed our affirmative action bill. Now, the question you ask, is it enough to pass the bill? Is it enough to pass the bill? In Ghana, we know we have beautiful laws, but implementation is an issue. So we have this law. But how do we ensure that the provisions in the bill are actually manifested? That is a conversation that we should begin to have.
And that's a conversation we will have on the Gender Watch podcast in one of the episodes. So I'm glad that you're bringing it up. But since you've talked about political barriers, I want you to comment on political parties and their role in making our democracy inclusive and participatory.
Okay, so thank you. So even when you look at the leadership of the political parties, how many of them are women? We have to start from there. How many of them are women? Women should not only be included for their votes, but women should be included to also form part of the leadership of the political parties. And so there should be some parity when it comes to the political leaders, the political parties, party leadership structure. Women should not always be the women organizers. The positions of women organizers should not just be the position that is reserved for women, but we should have more women becoming the general secretaries and other positions, occupying other positions, flag bearership, nominating your flag bearership, voting for the flag bearership. It should not always be women. And then one of our political parties, like NDC, has, as we all know, has nominated Professor Nana Opoku-Agyeman as the running mate. These are some of the ways the political parties can also foster inclusion even within their party system. And so if the political party believes in the woman and puts the woman up for elections is a good way to go. I would say that we should not only end at giving women opportunity to be vice presidential candidate, but we should make them flag bearer of the political parties. Yeah.
And that's something we're yet to see for the two main political parties, because I know that in the past we've had female flag bearers for some political parties. The NDP is one of them. Even in the 2024 elections, the CPP's presidential candidate is a woman. And then we have Ikea Donko of the Ghana Freedom Party. But for the two main political parties, that's something that they're yet to do.
Yeah.
They're yet to do. Now, in your response about democracy and women not being able to do more than just supporting, there's something that just came up. How do we ensure that women's participation, involvement in this thing we call democracy goes beyond voting? I think the general notion, and not just for women, but for a lot of Ghanaians, is that democracy is when you go and vote. Okay, how do we ensure that women can be empowered to engage more actively in other aspects of political civic life, not just every 4-year cycle and you go and vote to elect an MP and a president?
Yes, so like I mentioned, it should not just be limited to getting women to vote, but also giving them opportunity to occupy key positions in the political party structures. We should also have mentorship programs for women within our political party, where experienced female political leaders would mentor a generation of women who would also who have expressed or who in the future would take part in politics. There should be that kind of mentorship, you understand. And when you look at the political party, parties, you see they have this issue of godfathers. So we should have kind of godmothers in the political party system, where we will have experienced women mentor other women to take up political positions after they have left. So we would always have a cycle of women who are ready, poised to take up political leadership position. Empowerment. Empowerment can be in the form of education. Empowerment can be in the form of money, resources, finance. And the political parties can also lower the filing fees of women who have expressed interest. And I think that is being done, and that is a good one. We can look at, so when the filing fee, the amount of the filing fee has been reduced for the women, what is the statistics? Are we seeing any improvement? If we are not seeing any improvement, can we dialogue? Can we have a discussion on it? What more can we do? And so we can look at the other issues of violence against them, and all these other issues we are talking about, to address these issues, give them some form of protection, so that when the filing fees, or they have the resources, or they are getting sponsorship, or they've been able to raise money themselves to contest, they will not have to bother about their security.
Okay.
You understand? Yeah.
Okay. So your response has focused primarily on the political parties, but let's zoom into other aspects. So, for instance, as citizens, you and I, what must we do? What role must we play to ensure that this democracy that we've come to accept as our system of governance is inclusive and participatory, and not just for a few people, elites?
Okay, so I think what citizens need to do, we have to be active citizens. We have to participate in elections. We have to talk about politics in every space we find ourselves. We have to discuss politics. We have to participate in town hall meetings when there are town hall meetings in demonstrations like it's going on issues concerning our development. We have to all be involved in these kind of activities, these kind of processes, democracy processes. That is when we can have the power to influence the decisions of the government. In fact, citizens are the government. And so we have to start from all the level, the local government level, unit committee, all the levels. We have to present ourselves and have it in mind that it is for us. It is about us and our children and about our society. And so we need to be active. We need to be involved because the decisions are to benefit us. And so participation at all levels, participation on all platforms. Yeah.
And just as a follow-up, for that to happen, would we as citizens need some form of reorientation in terms of how we are thinking about democracy, in terms of what we even think about women contesting for political positions, in terms of how we view women's role and involvement in our governance system in our everyday life? Do we need that kind of reorientation as citizens? Because from what you're saying, we need to do more. But can we do more if we do not understand what we have to do?
Okay, so from the statistics we have looked at, the general perception is people believe that women should be given the chance. So it is not just about the belief. It is not just about the belief, but also what are the structures that have been put in place to ensure that what we believe, what our perceptions are actually implemented or actually visualized. And so that is where we talk about the policies, inclusive policies. We talk about education. We talk about addressing the issues of economic barriers. We talk about gender-based violence barriers. All these barriers that are yes. And then I would also want to talk about the media. Media is key to our democracy. And so the media should also be oriented not to only highlight issues of the men because they are in the majority, but also be interested in the women and also highlight the issues of the women. Now, people will say, oh, where are the women? Where are the women? The women are there. We need to find them. We need to give them space. We need to give them a platform. And that is where the media comes in. That is where the media comes. So when the media also throw light on these women, these few women that are already in the space or doing small in their communities, in their districts, throw light on them. That is when we begin to see that, yeah, the women are actually there and they can do the work and they should be given the opportunity.
In wrapping up, just your thoughts. And I was just thinking, the kind of democracy we're practicing currently as a country, is it sustainable? Bearing in mind that it's just a few people who are leading in terms of driving the governance of the country, and the majority, women, are left behind or are left out. Is it sustainable? And I'm asking this question because you have presented research data from Afrobarometer. 2 or 3 months ago, there was a research from Afrobarometer on democracy where, per the data, we got to know that more people are receptive to the idea of military rule now than they were 10 years ago. So if we're looking at the trajectory of the data, it's as if what we are practicing now, if we do not take care, we might retrogress.
Yeah, so democracy presents participation. But unfortunately, what we see is that citizens have lost trust in that system because citizens are not being involved. Citizens are not participating. And so anytime the citizens lose trust in the system, then they begin to look at other systems that would work. And so even for people who share the view that, okay, so we need a military rule, they say that we need the military to come and reset the system. So they don't entirely believe that the military is the best form of government. They still believe in democracy, but they need that revolution to reset the system and get people to trust the system, get people to participate actively in the system where everybody's views are welcome.
Okay. Thank you so much for this very enlightening conversation about the meaning of democracy. Thank you. I really appreciate that. So we've been talking to Miss Divine Intiamwa Berko, who is the Gender Diversity and Inclusion Specialist at the West Africa Democracy Solidarity Network. She's been explaining to us the meaning of democracy, and she has given us data and statistics to buttress the point that more people are aware about how non-inclusive our system of governance is. And it means that it's a call to action. We need to do more. So as we end another eventful episode of the Gender Watch podcast, I just want to ask, what role are you playing to ensure that we have an inclusive democracy as a country? Thank you so much for being with us. I'm Regina Boliboti.